Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Wednesday's edition of Alaska Weather, middle of the week on the 10th day of August, 2022. I'm David Percy. Up first, kind of a frosty start to the day here with Chicken down to 26 degrees for a low temperature this morning, followed by Eagle at 27. And then off to the west there, northeast of McGrath and Nikolai, Toledo, 28 degrees, and Nikolai down to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So quite an area with the clear skies, chilly temperatures, definitely falling a little more than just dropping below the frost point there, especially at Chicken and Eagle, and even Toledo. And for the satellite imagery, you can see all the clear skies resulted in the chilly temperatures this morning with the areas of frost across a fairly wide area of the interior. A lot of clear skies and sunshine this afternoon, allowing temperatures to rise as warm as 70 degrees at Big Lake this afternoon, and temperatures mostly in the 60s elsewhere in the sunshine. And you can see clouds trying to increase over southern Cook Inlet and the system southwest of Kodiak, actually just south of the Alaska Peninsula, bringing some pretty gusty winds into the eastern Aleutians during the day today, wind gusting 50 to 55 miles an hour. From Nikolsky over toward Falls Pass, western Alaska Peninsula there, with rain not so much, really hasn't pushed into the Kodiak Island area, a couple hundredths of an inch so far, but that'll increase tonight as the system shifts eastward. Winds 20 to 25 miles an hour at Kodiak State Airport by comparison to the stronger winds back to the west there, and starting to pick up in the winds in Bristol Bay as well. But you can see just a lot of sunshine right out to the southwest coast and even offshore. Some pretty good breaks there from the Pribilofs westward. And also over the Aleutians, a fair amount of sunbreak activity out there from Amchitka and Kiska Islands eastward to the Fox Islands. And the central and southern panhandle, temperatures in the lower to mid-70s this afternoon with maximum sunshine around Ketchikan and Metlakatla, Shelter Cove, those areas, Craig Klawock. Then you start picking up some clouds over the northern panhandle with still a pretty good area of rainfall, although it's diminishing and starting to taper off now over the eastern North Gulf Coast. That earlier today brought about half an inch of rain to Cordova, which rain ended there at about 7 a.m. this morning. Otherwise, Yakutat picked up 2 inches of rain in the last 12 hours with moderate rain continuing into the afternoon, and then some shower activity, but not too much, spreading into the northern panhandle. And you can see the clouds starting to lift back up into the toward the North Gulf Coast with that system back to the west there, just south of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, up to the north, we've got some westerly flow carrying a band of moisture into the Arctic coast, extending eastward there all the way to the Mackenzie Bay area. Some of that's slipping on down through the Bering Strait with some clouds and a little bit of moisture, but nothing too heavy into St. Lawrence Island and the northern Bering Sea. And then farther to the west, the next system spreading clouds and maybe some rain into the Shimia and Attu area. On the chart today, basically high pressure over the southern Bering Sea centered near the Adak area, resulting in the light winds and clearing skies out that way into the Pribilofs, and then a few showers around St. Lawrence Island, but the main area of light rain occurring up along the western Arctic coast there to the central coast, a little bit on the east side. Heavier rain this morning ended. Alpine, or up there, I can't remember the location, but they had about several tenths of an inch falling, but that's pushed off to the east now. And then that old frontal boundary along the eastern North Gulf Coast, associated with the upper level low that's tracking into the Yukon, that kept the rain going over the Yakutat area today, as I mentioned, and trying to push into the Panhandle, but not having too much success doing that. And then the winds gusting 56 miles per hour at Ankun Airport there out of the north and northwest on the backside of that low near the Alaska Peninsula. Unalaska, let's see, Unalaska had gusts to 52 miles per hour at the Unalaska Airport. Nikolsky, 53 mile per hour wind gusts there. And for tonight, that system pulls eastward, so winds will slowly diminish and conditions become dry over the eastern Aleutians. Falls Pass had picked up about half an inch of rain. That'll become a little more showery and lighter tonight with the gusty northwest winds, possibly gusting anywhere from 30 to maybe as high as 50 miles an hour this evening, and then slowly diminishing tomorrow or later tonight and toward morning. Occasional light rain, Kodiak Island wind at this point not much of a factor there, mostly the gradient between the high over the central Aleutians and that main low center south of Chignik, creating the stronger winds back there. Westerly winds continue on the Arctic coast, kind of a weak trough skirting the east side there with a little bit of moisture. And then the rain changes to showers over the eastern North Gulf Coast. Stays fair over the interior. Some areas dropping down toward or maybe a little below the frost point again tonight in the interior with the light winds. And southern Panhandle looking good tonight with light winds, mostly clear skies. For tomorrow, partly mostly sunny, southern southeast coast, a little bit better chance of rain up north there with that moisture in the southerly flow, kind of moving from south to north and shearing off to the northeast into the eastern North Gulf Coast. But a pretty good chance of rain. Some of that could try to push up into the Wrangell Mountains and definitely into western Prince William Sound. Whether it reaches Portage or not, that's another story. And increasing rain over southern Cook Inlet and southern Kenai Peninsula, Resurrection Bay to Seward. Rain periods of Kodiak Island. That forecast good for the Alaska Peninsula as well. Still some pretty gusty winds. In fact, gale warnings out. Northwest winds 30 to 35 knots for the marine areas of the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow, but much lighter wind conditions back to the west. And then outlook for Friday. Another front drops down from the Arctic, spreading some rain, fog, drizzle into the western central Arctic coast. Winds don't appear to be too much of a factor with that. Definitely not on the eastern Arctic coast. Maybe some clearing in advance of that front. Otherwise, interior, not too bad. Light winds, dry conditions, partly to mostly sunny, especially the Yukon Flats down in toward Chena Ridge, maybe into the mid and upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country. Fair amount of sunshine there, partly to mostly cloudy for the Copper River Basin, maybe a few sun breaks, and then mostly cloudy, some scattered shower activity around for the Panhandle. Then that low center still just south of Kodiak Island, really not moving too fast in the front, shifting northward into the Barren Islands with rain pushing up across the Kenai Peninsula toward Turnagain Arm, having trouble getting in northern Cook Inlet. Definitely an increase in the clouds, maybe a few showers over the mountains of the Talkeetnas and Prince William Sound, but dry for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And lows for tonight, again in the 30s and lower 40s in the interior all the way to the Arctic coast, upper 40s out to the Bering Strait coast, or the Bering Sea coast, upper 40s, lower 50s, Alaska Peninsula, mid to upper 40s for the Aleutians, and 40s for the most part, some areas in the lower 50s for south central Alaska, especially down Homer with increasing clouds holding the temperature up there in the lower 50s, mid 50s Kodiak, and 50s to near 60 for the southeast coast, followed by highs tomorrow. Again, upper 60s to lower 70s for the southern Panhandle, otherwise lower to mid 60s up toward the north with more clouds and moisture. And in the lower 60s for the North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska, 65 to 70, maybe 71. But into the lower 70s there for the Tanana Valley, down in the northern Kuskokwim Valley, McGrath, Nikolai, Fairbanks, all in the lower 70s showing up again over toward Eagle, as well as the Yukon Flats area. Otherwise, upper 40s to lower 50s for the Arctic coast, and in the 50s, lower to mid along the Bering Strait coast, mid to upper 50s out over the Aleutians with still a chance of some sunshine out that way. Lows milder, just about everywhere in the 40s now, no 30s showing up, at least point forecast-wise here. Lower to mid 40s with 50 to 55 for the lows, southern Alaska and the Panhandle, Kodiak Island, 40s out over the Bering Sea, followed by highs in the lower to mid 70s, Yukon Flats down the Northway Toke, upper 70s around Eagle, and a little cooler over southern Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, good VFR, interior Alaska. All the way down to Cook Inlet, we've got some marginal VFR starting to slide northward. Same thing for Prince William Sound. IFR now into the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula. IFR, Kodiak, Fognak Island, and an area of IFR there over the eastern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, down to the Alaska Peninsula, and some marginal VFR between that and another IFR area over the western Aleutians. Also some IFR on the central western Arctic coast, VFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast, marginal VFR northern Panhandle, good VFR southern 2/3 or so of the southeast coast. And then for the afternoon, the eastern IFR zone over the Bering Sea doesn't really move much, kind of stays put there, but the area to the southwest expands northeastward now, making its way to about AKwx, and then a band of areas of IFR through the Bering Strait right up to about Point Hope, Cape Lisburne. Marginal VFR, western central Arctic coast, stays good VFR interior Alaska, including the eastern Beaufort Sea coast there. All the way down, marginal VFR trying to creep northward in toward Kenai there, but northern Cook Inlet staying VFR into the Madanuska-Susitna Valley. Some IFR now covering Prince William Sound into Passage Canal, possibly as far west as Portage by late afternoon. North Gulf Coast to about Yakutat IFR. Kamishak Bay, southern Kenai Peninsula, all IFR. And pretty much VFR for the Panhandle, some marginal VFR along the coast. And for the Friday morning time frame, IFR oriented from southeast to northwest there across the Gulf right into Prince William Sound and possibly into Girdwood, eastern Tourniquet Arm, definitely Whittier and Portage, and possibly Seward. And then marginal VFR, central southern Cook Inlet, western Alaska Range, southern Kuskokwim Valley. Otherwise not too bad in the interior, pretty good VFR, most areas deteriorating out toward the Bering Sea coast with some IFR right along the coast. And St. Matthew Island, Pribilofs down to the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, and a batch of IFR there from AKwx westward covering the southwest Bering Sea. And for the afternoon Friday, still have some IFR there for the Prince William Sound area and the western Arctic coast now, and looks IFR, much of the Bering Sea IFR, although from areas Atka eastward into Bristol Bay, marginal VFR, northeast Bristol Bay VFR, and IFR along the Kuskokwim Delta coast. And for Anatuvik, VFR for the pass there, same forecast for Adigan. Good VFR flying, north and south entrance there. Both passes, Brooks Range looking good for the day on Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR to start, gradually becoming marginal VFR, especially on the eastern approach of both passes. Rainy, though, staying VFR throughout the day. Windy VFR throughout the day Thursday, as well as in Isabel VFR. Now in Tasto, the moisture coming up from the south and southeast. Might start seeing some marginal VFR in the southern entrance. Otherwise, pretty good. Tanita, same thing. East side, maybe becoming trending toward marginal VFR later in the day. Portage, VFR to IFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 6 to 10,000 feet up over the northeast part of the state. Otherwise, around 10,000 feet, eastern Bering Sea and the remainder of Alaska, although a little higher in the Panhandle, about 12,000 feet, 14,000 feet over the western Aleutians. Icing moving northward, isolated moderate rime icing coming northward into southern Alaska, extending back to Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, between about 9 to 18,000 feet with the high freezing levels. And another batch sliding northeastward there into the western southwest Bering Sea, light to isolated moderate rime icing there, but way up there, 12 to 20,000 feet. And then some areas of icing just kind of grazing the Arctic coast in that westerly flow. It's about 65 knots jet stream level. Low pressure south of Kodiak Island, showing winds 35 to 50 knots blowing around that center, coming up into southern Cook Inlet. Otherwise, westerlies 35 to 45 knots along the Arctic coast. And at 3,000 feet southwest, 40 knots, turn westerly 40, mostly off the eastern Arctic coast there, but 35 to 45 knot winds around that low center southwest of Kodiak. And turbulence-wise, look for some considerable moderate chop there up over the western Arctic coast, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, western Brooks Range, also over southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak, Kachemak Bays, as well as the Alaska Peninsula and Fox Islands.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snyder, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
A tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major, usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline, so tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific tsunamis on the Aleutian Trench, and it's where the Pacific Plate is subducting underneath the American Plate, and we produce some very large, great quakes, and of course the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk, and then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I mean, I won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
very good.
Near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast, anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami, and then of course landslides in southeast. It's even more intense because we can't.
Shorter warning time.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So if you feel shaking, and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold, and you need to start counting slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So 1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you can count anything you like. And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps. Especially helps kids, but it'll help your psyche.
So you don't speed up because you're getting stressed out.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean. Right. This is important if you're next to the ocean. If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place undercover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles. You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise. So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had an inundation up to 10 miles. So.
And that was a big quake.
That was a big quake.
So you have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
To 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate. And that is, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide. And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving. So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in '64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing?
Not guaranteed. It might go out, it might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind, but that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead. So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise, get out of there. And if it goes out really fast, get out of there. You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or pick up fish or shells or, you know, so. And it should feel weird
Right.
You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe.
Okay.
Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out.
Right.
And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping
Yeah.
at night
Yeah.
near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore.
That would be different.
That would be weird.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock grains.
Interesting.
So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird.
Okay.
Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what their risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business?
Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC.
NTWC.
The
Okay.
URL is not intuitive at all.
Okay.
There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready.
Okay.
And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program.
Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay.
And that's AKwx.
AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth and how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecast, pretty light variable winds over the inside waters and inner channels of the Panhandle. Variable 5 to 10 knots, seas down to 2 feet or less. On the south coast, though, outer coastline, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots with 5-foot seas. And then south winds 10 to 15 knots for the north coast, with seas running up that way 5 to 7 feet. And for the day on Friday, south winds at 10 knots for the central and northern inside channels, seas still pretty slight at 2 feet, and northwest at 10 for Clarence Strait. For the south coast, northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, seas 5 feet. On the north coast, southeast winds 15 knots with seas 6 to 7 feet. Prince William Sound for Thursday, northeast winds 15 knots with 3-foot seas. North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories, east-southeast winds 25 to 30 knots, seas about 6 feet. Gale warnings for the Barren Islands, east winds 35 knots, seas 7 feet, and small craft advisories for southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, where winds will be north to northeast at 30 knots with seas up to 8 to 10 feet. North of the Forelands, though, for Cook Inlet, northeast winds at 20 knots. That holds through Friday, northern Cook Inlet, northeast at 20. Lighter winds to the south there, south of the Forelands, north at 20. East winds 15 knots, Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. And east-southeast 20 to 25 knot winds in the forecast for the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, east winds at 20 knots. Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait specifically, northeast at 30 knots tomorrow, seas just under 10 feet. Otherwise, southeast winds at 15 knots. Gale warnings for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest winds 30 to 35 knots, seas just under 10 feet. For Bristol Bay, northeast winds at 15 knots. And for Friday, small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, west winds 25 to 30 knots, seas around 8 feet. Bristol Bay looking at a west wind at 20 knots with 5-foot seas. Kodiak Island, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, seas running 4 to 6 feet. And for Unalaska Island, gale warnings. Northwest winds 25 to 35 knots for the day Thursday, but much lighter winds for Unmac Island, northwest at 15 to 20 knots. Variable to southwest winds 10 to 15 knots central Aleutian, western Aleutians, south to southeast winds at 20 knots. And for Friday, western Aleutians, Shimiatakiska, small craft advisory, south winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories also for the central Aleutians, southwest winds 25 knots. For the eastern Aleutians, west winds 20 to 25 knots, seas 6 feet. Southwest coast, west to northwest winds 20 to 25 knots on Thursday. Pribilof Islands, northwest winds 20 knots, west at 20 for St. Matthew Island. St. Lawrence Island, winds will be southwest at 20 knots, but seas will be up there around 8 feet. And for Friday, southwest winds 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island, seas down a little to 6 feet. The southwest coast, northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots. For the Pribilofs, northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, west winds at 15 knots. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast for Thursday, west winds 20 knots, maybe a few higher gusts, seas at about 4 feet, but small craft advisories for the central and western Arctic coast, west-southwest winds 25 knots with 5 to 8 foot seas. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, small craft advisory, south winds 30 knots, 8 foot seas, and then Cape Thompson to Wales, winds will be south at 20. And then for Friday, those winds swing around a little bit there. Southwest from Wales to Cape Thompson, about 20 knots, and then north winds 20 knots, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. For the western Arctic coast, northwest winds 15 knots, central coast west at 15. A little brisker on the east side there, southwest 20 to 25 knots with seas 4 to 5 feet. And for tonight, again, kind of a weak trough skirting the eastern Arctic coast there, maybe a little bit of moisture, but nothing too terribly heavy. Isolated showers back to the west, dry in the interior, rain trying to push northward into southern Cook Inlet and the southern Kenai Peninsula, Resurrection Bay, Prince William Sound, and showers taper off but linger there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, Elfin Cove to Yakutat area. Windy conditions, rain, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, high pressure over the Bering Sea for pretty good conditions there, which holds through tomorrow. Rain, again, increasing along the Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet, North Gulf Coast, maybe spilling into the Copper River Basin a little bit there. Otherwise, another partly to mostly sunny day, northern Cook Inlet, mostly sunny in the central and southern interior, and then maybe some scattered shower activity farther to the north, especially on the eastern Arctic coast. And then for Friday, cloudier and a little bit better chance of rain for southern Alaska, but not too bad in the interior and the front along the western Arctic coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.